Hey everybody, Tony Katz here with Craig Robinson for TIR Nation, TIRNation.com. Here in South Carolina, Charleston this time. We were in Myrtle Beach just yesterday covering the debate. Second debate just a few days away here in Charleston, and then of course the primary for South Carolina on January 21st. We are in the lobby, the bar area, if you will, of the Courtyard Marriott on Calhoun, and we thank them for all of their great hospitality. Craig, let me ask you a question, or have a conversation about establishment versus not establishment, because there are two interesting narratives going on. One is, who is the insider? And then who's getting the insider support? So you have people like Gingrich who actually want to kind of play that they're a bit of an outsider, but he spent years and years in Congress. Then you have Romney, who wants to talk about his experience outside of the political system, but all of his support is from establishment people. How in the world are they going to, how does this balance out, and where does the affinity lie?
That is a great question, Tony.
I try my best.
It is a great question. Look, the establishment candidate in this race is Mitt Romney. I mean, hands down. I mean, look at where all the money's flowed from. And two, so Romney has raised the most money. He's also the establishment candidate in the sense that, look, what Republicans have kind of a nasty habit, in my opinion, where they ordain, okay, the guy who didn't get it the last time, now it's his turn. So this kind of feels like, oh, it's Mitt Romney's turn again. Mm-hmm. So, again, that's another establishment thing.
Does that work? When we saw that, and I can remember clearly, it was Bob Dole. It was Bob Dole's turn. It was Bob Dole's chance to run for president against Clinton in 1996. And I have heard my entire political lifetime, never again, never again.
Right. And we're about to do it. And I think it is the same. And it's because, you know, we're looking at the primary and not necessarily looking at who matches up best with the president down the road. Right. And so it's like Romney has everything that you know the establishment types look at. What's the most important thing? Can he raise a lot of money? Check. You know, do we know him? Yeah, sure. We've accepted him. Check. Mm-hmm. Okay. But again, do we? I mean, look, between the Tea Party movement and the Occupy Wall Street movement, the last thing that I think Republicans should nominate is kind of a guy who is the epitome of the 1%, a corporate guy. Romney, you listen to his debate, he was asked about hunting in the debate on Monday night.
Well, he's an avid hunter.
He's an avid hunter and didn't really know what he hunted. Okay, and now but he doesn't connect. He's not a guy that most people relate to. He's a corporate candidate. It's not an attack on him, but that's just the reality of it. And I think that makes him the insider.
You know, you talk about the conversation between the elk and the moose and that whole thing, and no one's going to believe Romney is a hunter. You might as well see Dukakis riding around in a tank again. But two conversations came up about taxes. The first was the tax rate conversation, where you had Perry, of course, touting his 20% rate. You had Romney talking about 25%. Gingrich talking about 15%, I believe. And then, of course, Ron Paul with the goose egg, 0. Worked until 1913. Why couldn't it work again? Then you had the conversation about tax records, where Mitt Romney went about this very, very long, convoluted answer not to answer about whether he would provide his tax returns.
To Romney's credit in these debates throughout, he's always looked calm, cool, and collected. When he was asked about releasing his tax documents, man, he got really nervous and really, you know, he was stumbling all over his own tongue. And so, I mean, I think that tells you something's wrong. He came out today and said that he was asked again about it. And he said, well, you know, most of my income comes from investments. And so I probably pay and I'm in the 15% range, which is 10% low, his highest tax rate.
Right.
This is a problem, and I think he understands it's a problem. And I actually think Perry made a good point at saying, look, you need to disclose this now because this is an issue that's going to be made in the general election, and Republican voters should have an idea of what they're going to have to defend now when we're selecting our nominee, not after we're stuck with them.
On that topic, isn't there this kind of feeling that you got from last night's debate, and again, you referenced Rick Perry in this regard, that you have Perry and Gingrich saying out loud, we've got to vet you, Mitt Romney, to make sure you are the right candidate. It's almost as if there's a quasi-concession in that thought process.
That they acknowledge that he's like that he is the front runner, right, that he is the presumptive nominee, and I think that part of the problem is, and maybe this is a credit to the strategy that Romney ran, that he adopted for his campaign. That here's a guy, he has not been vetted to the extent that Rick Santorum has, that Newt Gingrich has, that even Rick Perry has. Why? Because, well, he ran 4 years ago, and we know everything there is to know about him. So we really don't need to drudge all those things up again. But I actually think we do, because this is a different election cycle, and different issues matter. Look, his health care bill 4 years ago is not what drug him down. He was actually touting that as a success.
Right.
4 years later, it's an anchor.
Well, it's an anchor that still has him high in the polls if we're still paying attention to the polls. But in not releasing these tax returns, let me give you this. This is from Stuart Stevens, who's a Romney strategist, talking about Florida. 2 debates in Florida, the 23rd in Tampa, the 26th in Jacksonville. Mitt Romney has not accepted the invitation to those debates. And here's what the strategist, Stuart Stevens, said. He said, there are too many of these. We have to bring some order to it. We haven't accepted Florida. It's kind of like a cruise that's gone on too long. If Romney doesn't accept, how does that play?
I actually think it would be the biggest mistake that campaign would make, because I think that I understand why they don't want to debate. They're done with it. The media says we're the nominee. Let's just get it over with. Why do we want to keep opening ourselves up to these attacks from the media as well as the other candidates? But the problem is I think the public, the general public, would just recoil at the thought that they don't want to stand and debate as the field narrows. I think these debates, just like the one we had on Monday night, these debates are more important because they're now more focused, because there's not 8 guys on the field.
Did you like the debate that there were only 5 guys, that the questions got to be answered a little bit more, they got to do a lot of back and forth? Did you like the idea of no bell, no
yes,
none of that time constraint?
Absolutely. Look, they're adults, okay? I mean, they don't...
Well, that's going on a stretch.
They don't always act like it. But, I mean, look, they can have the conversation. I like the fact that we were able to see a candidate like Santorum lay a trap, walk his prey into it, and then snatch it, okay? That's what I want to see, because that's what you're going to have to do. Look, the general election debates are much like that. It's going to be 2 guys, and a moderator that's not going to be like Juan Williams. The moderator's going to fade to the background and guide the conversation, not actually say, no one's going to say, President Obama, you did this, defend it. That's not how general election debates work. And so I think this debate, this style of debate, actually helps them prepare more, because they're going to engage each other.
You don't think Romney gains by saying, listen, I've done the debates, we've done enough debates, the American people are tired of debates. I'm going to go out and meet the people of Florida, I'm going to shake their hands, I'm going to do local town halls. You're more than welcome to come down, but it doesn't do any good to get on stage and rehash the things that people want to rehash. The American people have problems. They need jobs. They need an economy that's moving. I know how to fix that. There, I just wrote the Romney line. Doesn't he gain something from that?
He doesn't. He gains it with his supporters. It's an argument that he can legitimately make. No one's doubting that. The problem is that after South Carolina, we might have a race that only has 4 candidates in it, or 3. That changes the dynamic. Look, if the debate stage in Florida
That's a good
is
point.
Mitt Romney, Ron Paul, and Newt Gingrich, or
some variation thereof,
or even 4 candidates, that debate changes dramatically over the issues that we're going to talk about. And
so you're expecting Rick Perry to be out of this race?
Absolutely,
South Carolina.
Absolutely. I think I think this is part of rebuilding his brand. Okay, competing here, and I think he's doing that to an extent. I don't see anything that's going to salvage his candidacy at this moment.
Craig Robinson, TIRNation.com. We have much more coverage ahead and throughout the week from South Carolina, from Charleston, as we cover the second debate on Thursday and, of course, the primary Saturday, January 21st. Keep it here, TIRNation.com. Tell your friends this is where you get all the videos, all the blogs. Thank you so much for joining us. For Craig Robinson, I'm Tony Katz. See you in a moment.